Hi, I'm Dr. Francis, a world-renowned wildlife nutritionist. You may not have heard of me, but your koala sure has. So let's talk about transitioning your dog or cat to their new diet today. Yes, koalas make that noise. They are evil. They literally bit my friend fingers off at the zoo. So why would you want to transition your dog or cat to a new diet? Well, maybe you need to incorporate some rotation. Maybe you just don't like the current diet. Maybe your dog is not doing really well on it. Maybe you just want to try something new. Whatever the reason is, you need to transition properly to avoid any potential gastrointestinal upsets for your dog or cat. Even if you're switching over to a protein they've already had or to a brand that they've already had before, you always want to do a transition because you never know what can happen, right? Some dogs have stomachs of iron and they seem to be able to take any diet immediately. But things can change over time, and that magic ability that your dog or cat has may not always be there, or it may not apply to certain kinds of foods or ingredients. So just to be on the safe side, you want to do slow and steady transition. So we're going to go through the 4 steps, how to transition to a new diet. So the first thing you want to do before you do step 1 is you want to give them a spoonful of this new diet. So if you're giving a kibble, then you just sprinkle a few kibbles. If you're giving canned food or fresh food, whether it's cooked or raw, you just want to take a spoonful and introduce it to your dog or cat. Mix them with the diet. Literally just a spoonful. This will allow you to check for allergies, sensitivities, any really huge issues that you couldn't foresee for your dog or cat. So if they are not eating it at all, that's already a really big clue that you will need to either continue giving spoonfuls for a while until they get used to it, you'll need to coax them to taste it, or you'll just have to give up and switch to another brand that they're least interested in. Because what's the point of transitioning to a new diet if they're not touching it? Defeats the purpose, right? So the first thing to try is adding in just a spoonful, seeing how they go. As long as they don't have huge reactions and they don't get crazy diarrhea or vomiting, then you're fine to actually start the transition and go to step 1. So once you've done that and made sure that the protein is okay for your dog or cat, then step 1, you're going to want to give 25% of the new diet and 75% of the old diet and mix that together. Even if you're transitioning over to fresh food, whether it's raw or gently cooked, you can absolutely mix it with kibble or with canned food. There's no problem with that. Just make sure that the new fresh food is not out for more than 30, maybe 45 minutes. Anything longer than that, you gotta throw it out because then it won't be sanitary anymore. It won't be safe. The risk will outweigh the benefits. So once you're feeding that, make sure that your dog or cat are actually consuming it, they're liking it. And then over the next day to 3 days, you're gonna wanna look at some specific signs. So you're gonna have to look at your pet's poop. You're gonna wanna make sure that the consistency is the same as before or better. Now, to be honest, if the fecal consistency becomes a little bit softer, that's okay, and that is not a reason to stop or to take a step back. It just means the digestive system is adjusting, which is what we want. It's completely normal. So if it gets a little bit softer, you're okay. But if the fecal comes out completely wet, like I'm gonna be very graphic now and say milkshake. If it comes out like a milkshake, you definitely wanna take a step back, feed the original diet until everything is nice and solid again. And then you probably need to go back a little bit slower. So even though there's 4 steps, you're gonna have to go step 1, step 2, and then maybe back to step 1, adjust some things. It's a process. So if your dog or cat are having some digestive issues with this new food, instead of doing 25%, you may just wanna do 10% and then take a lot longer. Once the poop has been completely fine for 3 days, you can proceed to step 2. Can you guess what that is? Obviously, it's 50-50, right? If we're going it by 25% increments. So then you're gonna give half the new diet and half the old diet, and you're gonna do the same thing. Look at the poop. Sometimes you may reach a certain point where the poop is no longer okay for your dog or cat, or maybe you'll see some other stuff like some itchiness or maybe even some vomiting. Again, you'll do the same thing. You'll take a step back to the previous step, make sure everything is okay, and then proceed slower. Then you can move on to step 3, which is 75% new diet, 25% of the old diet. And again, you're doing the same thing. You're looking at poop, you're looking at if there's any increased itchiness, any vomiting, any issues. Once again, if the poop is a little bit soft, no worries, you can proceed. It should get better over the next 3 days. If you're moving from a processed kibble or canned food diet over to a fresh food diet, you actually should see some pretty amazing things. The fecals should become a lot more solid, darker in color, less smelly, easier to pick up, and overall less fecal matter throughout the day. But if you're moving from one kibble to another, you may not see a big difference, which is great. It means that the transition happened successfully. If everything is going well for another 2-3 days, then guess what? You're at step 4, and step 4 is basically you're done. So it's 100% of the new diet. Again, keep a watchful eye for the next 3 days, make sure everything is okay. But overall, you just completed your dog and cat's diet transition. So for most dogs and cats, it'll take about a week. But for some more sensitive dogs or cats, or if let's say you're very nervous or apprehensive about it, yeah, it could take you 2 weeks, it could take you a month, and that's okay. Actually, the slower, the better. 25% is for the average dog and cat that have no significant issues. But if you want to do 10% or 15% each time, you can absolutely do that. Most dogs and cats will be even better for it. Something that you can use to help during your transition are probiotics and also digestive enzymes. So some digestive enzyme supplements in powder form could be added maybe a few days before you start the transition, just to help make sure that the new food is being digested and absorbed just as well as the previous food before. Now, this is not a go-to, you don't have to do it, but especially if you know that your pet has a digestive issue or problem, or maybe just a sensitive gut, this is something that you can definitely consider digestive supplements during the transition. If your pet vomits throughout this whole process, then again, you're gonna wanna take a huge step back, go back to the normal diet until everything is okay. Then you can try to introduce it in smaller amounts, like maybe 5 or 10%. But if you're seeing consistent problems, like always milkshake poops, or very often vomiting, or hopefully you don't see any scratching or red bumps or any heat rashes, if you see things like that consistently, no matter how slow you go and how much you try, you may need to just wave the white flag and say goodbye to that food and try something else. Dogs and cats can be allergic to any ingredient. So of course we focus on the protein most of the time, but it could actually be a tiny little ingredient at the bottom of the ingredients list of whatever you're feeding. So you may want to try the same brand, different protein, and if the issue is the same, then you probably need to switch to a different brand that has a whole different set of ingredients. Hopefully your dog and cat doesn't have these allergies or food sensitivities, because they are a nightmare to deal with. They're very, very difficult. You can check out our video with Vet Tech who helped to weigh in on this, over here, or here, or here, or here. I don't know where they're gonna put it. It'll be around my face, but don't cover my face. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and helped you transition your dog and cat onto some better diets. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.